Have you ever wondered why good people suffer? It's a question that has puzzled humanity for millennia, and one of the most profound explorations of this mystery is found in the ancient story of Job. Let's journey back to the land of Uz to meet a man whose faith was tested in the most extreme ways imaginable. The story begins not on earth, but in the heavens. The celestial beings present themselves before God, and among them comes Satan, the accuser. God points out his faithful servant, Job, describing him as a blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil. But Satan is skeptical. He argues that Job is only righteous because God has blessed him and put a hedge of protection around him. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, Satan challenges, and he will surely curse you to your face. God, confident in Job's integrity, permits the test, but with one condition: Satan must not lay a hand on Job himself. And so, the storm of tragedy begins to gather. Back on earth, Job is a picture of prosperity. He's a wealthy man with a large family, respected by all. But one after another, messengers arrive, each bearing devastating news. His oxen and donkeys are stolen, and the servants killed. Then fire from the sky consumes his sheep and their shepherds. Another raid takes his camels. And in the most heart-wrenching blow, a mighty wind collapses the house where his 10 children were feasting, and all are lost. In a single day, Job loses everything he holds dear. His world is shattered. Yet, in his profound grief, Job tears his robe and shaves his head, but he falls to the ground in worship, saying, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." Through this unimaginable loss, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. The scene shifts back to the heavenly court. God once again points to Job's unwavering faithfulness despite his losses. But Satan presses further. Skin for skin. He declares, "A man will give all he has for his own life. But stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." So, God allows the second test, but with a new limit. Satan can afflict Job's body, but he must spare his life. Soon, Job is struck with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. He sits in ashes, scraping his agonizing wounds with a piece of pottery. His suffering is so immense that even his own wife despairs, telling him, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." But Job rebukes her, asking, "Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" Even in this, Job did not sin in what he said. He maintains his faith, though his body is racked with pain and his heart is broken. Word of Job's catastrophe reaches his 3 friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. They travel to comfort him, but when they see him, he is so disfigured by suffering that they barely recognize him. They sit with him in silence for 7 days and 7 nights, sharing in his silent agony, for they saw how great his suffering was. This silent compassion is perhaps the most helpful thing they do. When the silence is finally broken, it's by Job himself. He doesn't curse God, but he curses the day he was born. He pours out his anguish, wishing he had never existed, questioning why he was brought into a world of such pain. This raw, emotional cry opens the door for a series of long, intense debates. His friends, who came to comfort, now become his accusers. They operate on a simple, rigid belief system. God is just, therefore, suffering is always a punishment for sin. Eliphaz speaks first, suggesting that Job must have committed some secret sin to deserve such a fate. "Consider now," he says, "who, being innocent, has ever perished." Bildad follows, arguing that Job's children must have sinned, and that Job himself needs to repent. Zophar is the harshest, insisting that Job's punishment is actually less than his sins deserve. Throughout these cycles of speeches, Job fiercely defends his innocence. He knows he's not perfect, but he is certain he has done nothing to warrant this level of punishment. He feels abandoned by God and misunderstood by his friends. Their words are like salt in his wounds. He calls them miserable comforters. Job's frustration grows. He's not just arguing with his friends, he's wrestling with God. His prayers become more desperate, more demanding. He longs for an audience with God, a chance to plead his case before a divine judge. He cries out, "Oh, that I knew where I might find him." He wants answers. Why is this happening? He feels like God is treating him as an enemy, hunting him down without reason. Yet, even in his darkest moments of doubt and despair, a glimmer of faith remains. He famously declares, "Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him." He holds on to the belief that his Redeemer lives and that one day he will see God. After the three friends fall silent, a younger man named Elihu, who has been listening to the entire debate, speaks up. He is angry with Job for justifying himself rather than God, and he is angry with the three friends for failing to refute Job's arguments. Elihu offers a different perspective. He suggests that suffering isn't always punishment. Sometimes God uses it as a tool for discipline and instruction to save people from pride and bring them closer to himself. He prepares the way for the ultimate speaker. Suddenly, out of a whirlwind, God himself answers Job. But he doesn't give Job the direct answers he was looking for. He doesn't explain the heavenly wager with Satan or list Job's supposed sins. Instead, God unleashes a torrent of questions that put Job's suffering into a cosmic perspective. "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation?" God thunders. He questions Job about the mysteries of creation, the stars, the sea, the snow, and the rain. He speaks of the wild mountain goats, the powerful horse, the majestic eagle, and the untamable creatures, Behemoth and Leviathan. Through this breathtaking display of divine power and wisdom, God reveals his sovereign control over a universe far more complex and wonderful than Job could ever imagine. The point wasn't to belittle Job, but to expand his vision. God is essentially saying, "Job, if you cannot grasp the workings of my physical creation, how can you possibly understand the complexities of my moral justice?" The universe doesn't revolve around Job or any single human. It operates according to God's infinite wisdom, which is beyond human comprehension. Faced with the sheer majesty of his Creator, Job is humbled. All his arguments, his demands, his questions, they all melt away. He realizes the foolishness of questioning the Almighty. He covers his mouth and says, "Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know." He repents, not for a specific sin that caused his suffering, but for his prideful arrogance in demanding an explanation from God. He has moved from simply knowing about God to truly knowing God. He says, "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you." In the end, God rebukes Job's three friends. Their neat, tidy theology had misrepresented God's nature. He instructs them to offer a sacrifice, and tells them that his servant Job will pray for them, and God will accept Job's prayer. This act restores Job's honor in front of the very friends who had condemned him. And then God restores Job's fortunes. The Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former. He gave him twice as much as he had before. He was blessed with another 7 sons and 3 daughters, who was said to be the most beautiful in all the land. Job lived to a ripe old age, seeing his children and their children to the 4th generation. The story of Job doesn't give us a simple formula for why we suffer. It denies the easy answer that all suffering is direct punishment for sin. Instead, it invites us into the mystery. It teaches us that faith is not about having all the answers. It's about trusting God's character and wisdom even when His ways are beyond our understanding. It shows us that it's okay to cry out to God in our pain and confusion, to wrestle with our doubts. And ultimately, it reminds us that even in the darkest whirlwind, a genuine encounter with God can bring about profound peace and restoration. The story isn't just about Job's suffering, it's about his unwavering, though tested, faith and his ultimate encounter with the living God. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like, share and subscribe for more deep dives into timeless stories of faith.